Welcome to the Autoimmune Campfire.
Join us, coaches Helen and Nona, for honest, heartfelt conversations around living well with a chronic condition.
Come sit at our campfire. There's a chair waiting for you.
Hi, Nona.
Hey, Helen.
Here we are, coming to the campfire for our chat today. And I want to know, how are you arriving?
How am I arriving? I am arriving feeling really curious and excited to hear your story. I don't think I've heard the entire story, even though we were on contact via Marco Polo when I was in Zambia and you were experiencing all of the ins and outs and navigating the diagnosis. I haven't heard the whole story, so I'm really excited. How about you? How are you feeling?
Oh my gosh, I'm coming in feeling refreshed and vigorous after a week at the beach. We had our both of our children with us, and they each brought 3 friends. And so it was a lot of hanging out and laughing and fun. And I read 2.5 books while I was away. I watched sunsets and sunrises on the beach. It was just so I'm feeling really filled up, and it's my first day back in work, and so I've got some bits and pieces going on, but I'm still smiling, and yeah. And I'm really happy to be talking to you today.
Oh yeah, always. What book? Well, I have to ask, what books did you read?
So I read Covenant of Water by
Oh,
Abraham Verghese. I don't know if I'm saying his name right.
so good.
So good. And then I read It Started With Us because I went with my daughter to see It Ends With Us. And then I had to read the happy ending, right? So I read that. It was, perfect beach read. And now I'm reading I'm reading Radiant Rebellion by Karen Warrand. And it's all about aging in a way that is radiant, that we can be radiant no matter our age, right? And she's pulled in a lot of data around we don't have to decline as we age. And I'm finding it really interesting from a perspective of autoimmune as well. And really, as I age and with autoimmune condition. So I'm really loving it. She's a brilliant writer.
Oh, fantastic. So we can age radiantly even with a chronic condition.
Right. That's what, as I'm reading it, I'm thinking, oh, where can this from aging apply to autoimmunity too?
Yeah, absolutely. Fantastic. So are you ready to dive in and tell your story?
Yes, I think I am.
Tell me about the moment, the time, that period when you were diagnosed and what led to it.
We were in 2017. I just had my 50th birthday, and my mom had just been diagnosed with cancer. My father was diagnosed with Alzheimer's. I live in the northeast coast of America. They live on the northeast coast of England. And so I was doing a lot of going backwards and forwards to visit. And then after my mom passed in 2018, to help take care of my dad. Yeah, I had 2 children in high school. I had a full-time job. I was traveling a lot to give leadership development trainings. And so I just had this really full and rich life, which I'm very thankful for, great colleagues. And then with my mom's diagnosis and then going to England so many times, that was really important and values aligned, but also really hard. As I said, after my mom passed, I would go every 3 months to take my stint with my dad because he couldn't really live alone. So my sisters were taking care of him, and then I would go and do a stint. And I I had an emergency appendectomy in August. And in October, I went to take my stint with my dad. And we were at the train station, and he has Alzheimer's. He got really startled and just ran off in a direction. And I had all the bags, and I went running after him. And he went, of course, nifty as anything, up these stairs, across the bridge. And I'm like, Dad. And I was running, and I fell, and I hit my knee, and I hit my hand. And I had this weird experience that I've never had since, which felt like a firework went off in my knee, my left knee and my right hand. And I thought, oh God, what was that? It wasn't pain. It just felt like a neurological, just something broke. And I don't know what it was. Anyway, captured my dad. He didn't get on the wrong train, got him back. Next day, I flew back to the States with a little bit of a swollen knee and a swollen hand. And I just thought, whew, didn't break anything fabulous. Keep going. Next day, I left and I went to DC and was working there. And so on the way back, I got to get up off the train and my knee was so swollen, I couldn't even stand on it. So I had been standing front of room doing a leadership development event all day, been fine, got on the train and it just blew up like a football. So I had to hop off the train. I grabbed my bags, like slung them off the train, hopped off. And that night, my husband and the kids picked me up and we were going for dinner to celebrate something. I can't even remember what now. And I was like, yeah, my knee's a bit swollen. And I was like, yeah, but we can do it. This is so, let's just white knuckle it. Just, that's my thing. So we went and had dinner. And by the time we came out of dinner, I just couldn't move at all. And so my son actually carried me out of the restaurant, which was, I went to a doctor and they drained my knee and did a number of tests. It was just a surgeon and he put steroid in it, without asking, which I find so fascinating. He talked into his recorder the whole time as if I wasn't even in the room, and I'm sure that makes it much easier. My most generous assumption is that makes it so much easier for him to write his notes at the end of the day, but it makes you feel completely inhuman when you're sitting on a desk on a bed with a, swollen knee and like you're looking for answers. It turned out all the tests came back were negative for anything he was looking for. And so my doctor suggested, well, let's have you see a rheumatologist because it just kept blowing up again. And he got me in with a rheumatologist who was a friend of his, and they did a number of blood tests and assessments. And immediately he wanted to put me on some medicine. And I said, well, I really want to know what I have first before you put me on something. Because what's interesting about rheumatoid arthritis is, the first line of treatment is Plaquenil, which is an antimalarial, and then methotrexate, which is a chemotherapy. And I just thought, wait, what do you like? It's like you're hitting it with things that, I want to know what I have. So we did the blood tests and it was about 4 or 5 weeks before they came back. And I kept calling and saying, do you have my results yet? And they were like, no, they're not here yet, but you could take the medicine. And I was like, can I get my results? Anyway, turns out when I got my results, it was moderate to severe rheumatoid arthritis. And so even as, a physiologist who spent my career in medical research, I really didn't know what rheumatoid arthritis was. In fact, I remember watching TV and those ads come on, the ads that come on that have somebody skipping through the daisies and saying, this medicine gave me my life back, but it can also kill you, essentially and I just thought to myself, why would anybody take that for just arthritis? And I missed the first word, rheumatoid arthritis. So once I had this diagnosis, he said, oh, okay, you're too severe to even do Plaquenil or methotrexate. You're going to have to, but we have to start you on those because otherwise insurance won't pay for the other meds, the biologics, but they're probably not going to work for you. We need to get you on a heavy hit, like all the things. Yeah. And I just remember me saying, wait, what else is possible? Like I just was trying to figure out. I had already been doing a whole food plant-based diet. I'd already been sort of researching different diet or movement interventions, meditation, homeopathy, all sorts of different things. And he just said, look, if you don't take this, you're going to be forever, what was the word he used? Deformed and crippled. Some of the things that he said were correct. Often the most damage comes in the first year after your diagnosis. So it did make sense to start treatment early. And I also wanted some space to figure out, well, wait, what can I do on my own? Is there a natural solution?
You and me both, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah. I was, Nona, I was a little bit more hard-headed because within 4 months, I was in a wheelchair.
Oh, sister.
And when I look back now, I think when you're diagnosed with moderate to severe rheumatoid arthritis, probably the best thing is to get everything under control. And then the lifestyle pieces actually enhance that versus trying to go at something like a raging fire with a pipette drop of something. Do you know what I mean? It's like it wasn't. It was.
That's a great visual.
Anyway, the rheumatologist, I just happened to, this sort of is talking a little bit about the serendipities, but I knew the rheumatologist wasn't a great fit for me. And I think I had my annual GYN visit, and my gynecologist was quite stunned when she saw me, right? Walking with two canes and getting out of a wheelchair. And she was like, "What happened?" And she said, Helen, I know somebody, I have a number of patients with this condition, and the ones who are doing well are going to this doctor. And she gave me this doctor's name. And I called right from there. And that was like the start of me getting better, because she listened to me, and she said, I know where you are, and but here's some of the things. Okay. And yes, you don't need to be crippled or deformed for your whole life. Yes, some people do go into remission without medicine, because the guy said the only reason you'd go into remission, if you get into remission, is on medicine. And she said, no, there are other studies. And, so she was very much more on my team, and I just love her. So that was really helpful. But I literally was so hard headed that I was like, I got this. I'm going to do everything. I was doing somatic therapy. I was doing homeopathy. I was doing acupuncture. I was doing, I mean, throwing everything at it except medicine, essentially. And then the wheelchair was a real awakening. Like, I remember going on holiday and having to get a wheelchair to get me across the airport. And I just remember the tears coming down my face, because I was just like, wait, what has happened here? Like 6 months ago, I was running through the airport with my bag, traveling all over the world. Like, what the hell? And actually, it was the point where my daughter just said to me, what are you doing, Mom? Could you just please try the medicine? I talked to my doctor, and she said, yeah, at this point, you're looking at damaging your internal organs. You're so inflamed, and we might not get that back. So, but it was in such a compassionate way. Like, yes, I see what you're trying to do. I get it. But so that's when I started on medicine. I failed out of the first two medicines that you need to take to get to the biologic, because I was allergic to one, and the other one left me losing my hair and covered in bruises. And so the third one I started on, and I did fairly well, but couldn't ever taper off steroids. And so it just didn't get. And then I got a sinus infection and had to come off it for a while. And then when I went back on it, it just didn't work again. So I'm now on my, I don't know, fifth treatment regimen, and now I'm on infusions, and knock on wood, this one seems to be working really well. And yeah, I'm really thankful that I'm in this place where I could walk on the beach every day. And this year, I didn't even pack a cane. Whereas normally I pack a cane because I just never know, am I going to be able to walk or not? And this year I didn't even pack a cane. I thought, well, I can get one at the pharmacy if I need it. So, I mean, that's the difference in 6 years. And sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I had immediately gone on the medicine regimen that was recommended to start with. But what I found now is that my doctor she's like, I never thought we'd get you to this. So she has such a nod and a wink to the lifestyle pieces that I have brought in. It just wasn't going to be enough for me at the beginning.
Gosh, I mean, Helen, you have had such a challenging journey. And I know that there are going to be people who are going to be like, oh, I was thinking that too, or oh, that happened to me too. I mean, like, just challenge after challenge. And that moment with your dad in the train station, with, that moment where you knew that something different had happened. I mean, like, wow, because I am certain that other people are going to be like, yeah, that happened to me too, right? Like, it may not have been their hand and their knee, but because we have those moments where it's just like, oh, this isn't something that I've experienced before, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And actually, it's interesting that we call these episodes the perfect storm for ourselves, in that when I got a second opinion at Johns Hopkins, because I was thinking about I was curious about stem cells and been reading some things about stem cells. And my rheumatologist, the fabulous one, said, "Go get a second opinion. They probably know more about that than me." And I'm curious. And so I went there and she said, "I can't tell you how many people I see in your position. And we call it the perfect storm, you know." And we talk about hormones. I had my last period. My mom got diagnosed with cancer. My mom passed. I had an emergency appendectomy. Now I'm doing caregiving, not just at home and working and going overseas. She's like, that's a lot. She said, "I often see people come in with a story like yours. And it's as if that I have this mode of white knuckling it through. And it's like my white knuckle button got broke. And damn, I miss it."
Oh my gosh, that's so funny. That's a great way to do it. My white knuckle button broken.
Broken, it's done, it's kaput.
Right? Totally. And yeah, but that's such a common story. And a lot of times when people are talking about diagnosis or chronic conditions, they aren't taking context necessarily into account and how impactful that kind of stress is. So you've really just, I can feel the challenge that existed in that period of time and over the 6 years of really struggling to find your footing with what was going to work for you to help your body heal. And, Richard, our producer, bless him, he gave us this question that I know was like really gave me pause. And I know that you've actually been kind of struggling with this. And I'm really curious, like, what your answer is to this question. So, in all of the challenge, what was the easiest part for you in the journey with your diagnosis?
The hardest part, the challenges were the easiest to write down. The hardest part is the uncertainty, never knowing if I was going to have a flare, if I said yes to something, if I'd be able to go. Oh, being immune compromised in a pandemic, that was fun. All the things, asking for help, vulnerability, all the things that were hard. And I'm like, wait, what was the easy part? And one of the things I think I'm really thankful for, in fact, I know I'm thankful for, is I was seropositive for rheumatoid arthritis. So that one blood test, while it took weeks to come back, gave me a diagnosis. There are so many people out of there who's seronegative who spend years trying to get help and support and treatment and land in the right place. So I think the easiest part for me was giving blood and getting that diagnosis. I didn't have to go through doctor after doctor after doctor, search after search after search. And I think the ease came with accepting, because at first I just didn't want the diagnosis and I wrestled it. And I didn't want to own it. And once I actually accepted it, things got easier. Once I accepted I may only be able to do 3 things today, and I used to do 10. Then there's some ease that comes with that. Okay, well, so my whole family's going to a party, but I can't walk today, so I'm gonna take care of myself today. When I accepted that, instead of like, "Oh, what?" Like, "Why me?" Like the whole wrestle and the self-pity or the wrestling with it or the anger with it or all the things, just this is what it is. A little self-compassion has gone a long way in bringing more ease in.
Yeah, I actually remember it was during that time you told me that you were working through this self-compassion workbook with a friend of yours.
Yeah.
That was in that realm, wasn't
Yes.
it? Because that was
Yes.
and the other thing I want to say about that is like resignation versus acceptance, right? And the difference between those two. So acceptance, like kind of that soft landing into like versus, oh, well, I guess my life is over, right? Like there's a
Right?
difference.
Yeah. Or surrender, which felt like collapse,
Right.
So words, like definitions in words are important like that, because acceptance felt like a hand on my heart. It felt like "Oh, honey, this is hard.
Yeah.
And, you can do hard things."
And sometimes the hard thing is saying no, and taking care care of yourself, right? Without a doubt. So you already touched on this a little bit. You said you were talking about how one of your medical professionals suggested your current rheumatologist, and that was a real synchronicity. Were there other synchronicities or moments of grace that really stand out to you in your journey?
So that was, I think, the ultimate moment of grace. But I was in some advanced coach training, and one of the people I was paired with, her friend, was training to be an autoimmune coach and was looking for example clients to work with. And so I sort of had my hand held for a year with this lady who was learning her skill. And it was really powerful. And what was so powerful about that was she also had rheumatoid arthritis and she had ulcerative colitis. So to me, I thought, oh, so you're in this with me. And she was modeling how things could be different. And it really helped me, especially when I was like, I don't want to not have dairy in my diet, and it was just like, well, let me just try that for a little bit. It seems to have worked for her. Let's see if it works for me. So it was just very much, instead of being kind of prescribed more rules, I guess she came in with some respect because I knew she was walking my walk. The other thing was a friend of mine who I was doing the self-compassion workbook, which is, by the way, a phenomenal workbook. It's Kristen Neff and Christopher Germer, and it's just a lovely book of kind of practices in self-compassion. She started walking through it with me, and then she invited another friend of hers to join us. And this friend just so happened to have had rheumatoid arthritis from the age of 16.
Wow.
And I just got so much out of those conversations. And she was also really involved in the Arthritis Foundation. And I had just thought to myself, I'm not doing it. Like, once again, I didn't want to have the diagnosis, and I certainly don't want to be part of an organization. Wow. And I started going to those webinars. I learned so much. I felt much less lonely. Now I've done 2 Arthritis Foundation walks. We were like the second biggest team in Delaware, 2 years running, and raised all this money for this foundation that is helping people and funding research and all the things that I was like, no, don't want to be part of that. Don't want to do that. And actually it turned into a great gift.
The really key question that I think is on my mind certainly is, like, what would you say to the person who is just finding their footing with their diagnosis? They've just heard that they've been diagnosed with a chronic condition, an autoimmune disease, something like, what would you tell them from your vantage point of 6 years on?
Well, so much. It almost could be a whole episode in itself. But what I would say is, I think the first thing I would do is approach with empathy. Thank you for sharing. This is hard. And, what would support look like? I mean, I would want to be as supportive as I could, and understanding, what does support look like for you? Like, what boundaries do you need? What are you saying yes to? Like, I mean, I think for me, I really needed to go with boundaries at first because I was so busy doing everything. And my family have been incredibly supportive, but I wasn't asking for help. And I think at times asking for help is really incredible because when they help you, they get a boost in well-being just by helping you. So it's sort of like a gift. It's the gift that keeps giving. You get help and they feel valued, and it adds meaning. So I would say, ask for help. You're not alone. Find your community. At first, I think there was a lot of shame. Like, I'm not good enough now. I have this, or I'm broken. And I would challenge that story and say, you are. You're awesome as you are.
Yeah.
Did you experience this where it's like a lot of people don't talk about the condition because it comes with some judgment? And then that makes you feel very isolated.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And then, did I do something wrong? Like, there's this whole kind of line of thinking and around personal authority and health and lifestyle medicine, and you can fix that again, like back to bootstrapping, individualism, kind of, there's so much of that, especially I think in the realm we deal in, personal development, growth, yoga, all of those kinds of things. Like there's so much of that. It can be really difficult to stand in the middle and make a decision about how you want to proceed, and also to process like the reality of what it means. And the asking for help, like even the idea of thinking about asking for help. I mean, like, because, I haven't been in a wheelchair. I haven't been in that place, but I've definitely had the thoughts. I live in a house that's up and down. We have 3 floors. And I'm like, what would happen if, it's not helpful to do that. Right. But when you get that diagnosis, you're thinking about those things. Yeah. And so it makes sense that there's just all this emotional turmoil around the diagnosis itself, not to mention like altering and figuring out like who you're going to be with this diagnosis as part of your life, not as your identity, but as part of what you are navigating as a beautiful, full human being.
Yes, for sure, for sure. And I mean, I think the lifestyle pieces, as I said, can be important, right? I tried certain different lifestyle things, and certain things didn't work for me, like whole food, plant-based. I have too many allergies, so it was just too restrictive because I can't do grains. So there were so many things that I had to learn. And I think one of the things, yes, can I add one?
Of
One of
course.
the things, one of the things I want to add is, you are unique. And so just because you read, a number of things that have worked for other people, it may work for you, and that's wonderful. And it may not, but don't make that mean anything about you. It's like you're trying to figure out what works for you. And I think one of the things that's hardest in this is sometimes you can be doing all the, in inverted commas, right things, and you still have a flare, and you're like, well, damn it, I can't walk today, but I did all the things and I didn't overdo it. And I did and it just is. It just is.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean you're failing.
Right. Or that you did something wrong, or, and I think one of the things that comes up for me when I'm hearing you say that, it's like also like when you're looking at the landscape of those lifestyle choices and even medication choices and all those things, it's like really trusting yourself and what you know to be true about you.
Yes.
And I think that can be really hard in those initial days that are so fraught with fear and unknowns.
Yes. I mean, and I think that one of the things we're going to talk about in an episode is about advocating, and that's really important. And I think that would go into what I would tell somebody is, if I had stayed with my first rheumatologist, I don't know if I'd been doing so well.
Helen, is there anything else that you want to put here for the newly diagnosed to take away before we close this episode?
No, I think that's everything.
Well, I want to tell you thank you for sharing the depth and breadth of your experience here, because I know it's going to be so impactful for the people who listen and hear your story and can relate to all the things that you've had to navigate in your journey to date. So thank you so much. And I'm also, it's hard, and I'm sorry that you had to do that. And at the same time, I'm so glad that brought us here together.
Yes.
To share our experience, strength, and hope.
Yes. Thank you so much. And that's it. What I would say is, there is hope. Even when it feels like there isn't, there is. There is, it's there. And I want to thank you as well, because even though you were half a world away in Zambia, those Marco Polos made me feel so seen. And so, I mean, you would just say, I'm sitting with you, right? And I literally felt it, and it made all the difference. So thank you, Nona. You've been such an amazing friend to me throughout all of this.
You are so welcome.
Did you enjoy this campfire conversation? Please rate our podcast wherever you're listening to light the way for others to find the Autoimmune Campfire. The information provided on the Autoimmune Campfire is for educational or informational purposes only. It is not intended nor implied as a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always consult your physician or other qualified healthcare provider with any questions you might have regarding a medical condition or treatment plan. The Autoimmune Campfire does not recommend or endorse any specific tests, physicians, products, procedures, opinions, or other information that may be mentioned on this site or podcast. Recording and editing wizardry by Make Your Day Richer. Thanks for joining Helen and I around the campfire.